I worked for years to build my life from nothing, and when I finally succeeded, my own mother stood in front of everyone and claimed it was hers. Not just once, not by accident, but confidently, like she believed it. For a long time, I'd told myself this kind of family betrayal only happened in extreme stories, the kind you hear online and think, that would never happen to me. I was wrong. My name is Emma. I'm not famous, I'm not rich, but everything I have, I earned the hard way. I grew up in a small town where success was rare and expectations were even smaller, especially for girls. My mother, Linda, loved attention. She always had. To the outside world, she was charming, supportive, and endlessly proud of her daughter. Behind closed doors, she was a narcissistic mother who believed my achievements were extensions of her identity, not mine. Growing up, I learned early that praise came with conditions. If I did well in school, she told people it was because she pushed me. If I struggled, she said I embarrassed her. Nothing was ever just mine. Still, I believed she loved me. I wanted to believe that. After college, I moved away and started my career quietly. No shortcuts, no connections. Long nights, missed weekends, failure after failure, until things finally started to work. When my business took off, it felt unreal. Not flashy success, but steady, real, earned. That's when my mother re-entered my life in a different way. She started telling people she guided me, that she sacrificed everything so I could succeed, that without her, I'd be nothing. At first, I laughed it off. I didn't want drama. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted peace. But then something changed. At family gatherings, people congratulated her. Online posts praised her parenting. Strangers messaged me saying how lucky I was to have such a supportive mom. She was rewriting my story, and the world believed her. This wasn't just pride anymore. It was control, manipulation, a slow, quiet kind of family betrayal that made me question my own memories. Whenever I tried to correct her, she smiled and said, "Why are you being so sensitive?" That was when I realized something was deeply wrong, because this wasn't about love, it was about ownership, and I was about to learn what happens when a narcissistic mother feels entitled to your success, and what karma looks like when the truth can no longer be hidden. But at that moment, I still hadn't decided what I was going to do. At first, it was subtle. A comment here, a smile there. My mother never directly said, I built her success. She didn't need to. She let other people say it for her. When relatives praised my work, she would sigh dramatically and say, "Well, you know how much I sacrificed." When friends congratulated me, she replied, "I always knew she'd do well. I raised her to be this way." Each sentence sounded harmless on its own. Together, they formed a quiet pattern. This was family betrayal disguised as pride. I started noticing how she spoke for me, corrected my memories, finished my sentences. If I talked about struggling alone, she laughed and said, "Oh, she exaggerates. I helped her all the time." And people believed her because she sounded confident, because she was my mother, because no one expects a narcissistic mother to compete with her own daughter. The worst part wasn't what she said to others, it was what she said to me. When I finally confronted her, gently, she didn't deny anything. Instead, she looked hurt. "Why are you trying to erase me?" she asked, "after everything I've done?" I felt guilty instantly. That's how manipulation works. It doesn't scream, it whispers. She reminded me of every meal she cooked, every bill she paid, every sacrifice she claimed she made. Suddenly, my success came with debt attached. I began doubting myself. Was I ungrateful? Was I selfish? This is what family betrayal looks like when it grows slowly, when love and control get tangled together. Things escalated when my work started gaining public attention. An article mentioned my company. A small award followed. Nothing huge, but enough. My mother shared it everywhere, but not as my achievement. She captioned it, "So proud of what my guidance created." That line stayed with me. Created. Not supported. Not encouraged. Created. I felt something crack inside me. Still, I didn't explode. I didn't choose revenge. Not yet. Instead, I stayed quiet. I watched. I noticed how she began introducing herself using my success, how she enjoyed sympathy, admiration, and praise meant for me. And I realized this wasn't accidental. This was identity theft, emotional version. A narcissistic mother doesn't steal your money first. She steals your story. I started documenting things, saving messages, remembering conversations, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because something told me the truth would matter later. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I had a feeling karma doesn't rush. It waits, and when it comes through the truth. The more successful I became, the smaller I felt around her. That was the part no one talks about. From the outside, my life looked stable, confident, put together, but every conversation with my mother left me second-guessing myself. She started calling more often, not to ask how I was doing, but to check in. At least that's how she framed it. "Are you sure you're handling everything okay? I worry you're taking on too much. You know, without guidance, people can get lost." Guidance. That word again. This was no longer subtle family betrayal. This was control. When I told her about a new partnership, she warned me I was being naive. When I shared a small win, she reminded me not to get arrogant. And when I stopped sharing details, she noticed. "You've changed," she said. "You don't include me anymore." There it was. In her mind, my success wasn't something I owned. It was something she was entitled to access. A narcissistic mother doesn't need your permission. She assumes it. Things reached a new level when she began speaking on my behalf. Without asking me, she contacted relatives, then old family friends, then people I hadn't spoken to in years. She told them she was helping manage things behind the scenes, that she was protecting me from bad decisions. None of it was true, but lies don't need facts when they sound caring. I confronted her again, more directly this time. Her reaction was calm, too calm. She smiled and said, "I don't understand why you're attacking me." Attacking. That single word flipped the narrative instantly. Suddenly, I was the aggressor, the ungrateful daughter, the problem. This is how gaslighting works. You start the conversation with facts and leave questioning your sanity. She cried, not loudly, quietly. She told me she felt used, that people only spoke to her because of me, that my success had taken her life away. I remember sitting there, stunned. My success had hurt her? That's when I understood something painful. This wasn't about credit anymore. It was about identity. She needed my achievements to validate her existence, and the more I pulled away, the more desperate she became. I stopped correcting her publicly. I stopped defending myself. Instead, I listened. I watched how she exaggerated her role, how the stories changed depending on the audience, how she positioned herself as the mastermind, the sacrifice, the hero. People praised her strength, her parenting, her dedication. Meanwhile, I faded into the background of my own story. That's when the anger started to build. Not explosive anger, focused anger. I didn't want loud revenge. I wanted the truth. Because I knew something she didn't. Stories built on lies collapse on their own. And karma doesn't need help. It only needs time. The breaking point didn't come during an argument. It came during applause. My company was invited to a regional business event. Nothing massive, but meaningful, the kind of milestone you remember forever. I almost didn't invite my mother, but part of me still hoped, still wanted her to be proud, quietly, privately, without turning it into something else. I was wrong. When my name was announced, people clapped. I stood up, heart racing, trying to stay calm. Before I could even reach the stage, my mother stood up first. She laughed, hugged people around her, and said loudly, "That's my daughter. I knew she'd make it. I pushed her every step of the way." The room smiled with her. On stage, I thanked my team. I talked about hard work, failure, resilience. Then I heard it. Someone shouted from the audience, "You must be so proud, Mom." My mother waved. She stood again. She wouldn't be here without me. I taught her everything. That sentence hit harder than any insult, because it erased me completely. In that moment, the family betrayal became undeniable, public, permanent. I finished my speech on autopilot. My hands shook. My voice stayed steady, somehow. When it was over, people congratulated her. They thanked her for raising such a successful woman. They told her how inspiring she was. No one meant harm. That made it worse. I walked to the bathroom and locked the door. That's where I broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. I slid down against the wall and stared at the floor, trying to breathe. I wasn't angry yet. I was empty. This is the damage a narcissistic mother causes quietly, not through violence, through erasure. I realized something terrifying. She truly believed her version of the story. In her mind, this wasn't manipulation, it was truth. When I confronted her afterward, shaking, exhausted, she didn't yell. She smiled and said, "Why are you upset? I was just being honest." Honest. That word crushed whatever hope I had left. I told her she crossed a line, that my success was mine. She tilted her head and replied, "You wouldn't even be here if it weren't for me." That was it. No denial, no apology, just ownership. I didn't argue anymore. I didn't explain. I went quiet. That silence scared her more than any confrontation ever had, because silence means detachment. That night, lying awake, I made a decision, not fueled by rage, not driven by revenge, but by clarity. I wasn't going to expose her. I wasn't going to fight her. I was going to let her keep talking, because people who build their identity on lies always say too much, and karma doesn't arrive screaming. It arrives when the truth has nowhere left to hide. After that night, I stopped correcting her. That was my first move. Not out of weakness, but strategy. When people praised my mother for my success, I smiled politely. When she exaggerated her role, I nodded. No arguments, no explanations. A narcissistic mother expects resistance. She feeds on it. What she doesn't know how to handle is absence. I pulled back emotionally, slowly, carefully. I answered calls later. I shared fewer details. I stopped inviting her into my professional world. She noticed. "You're shutting me out," she said one evening. "I just want to support you." Support. That word had lost all meaning. I replied calmly, "I'm just busy." That uncertainty unsettled her, so she filled the silence herself. She started talking more, posting more, claiming more. This is how family betrayal exposes itself, when the person can't stop rewriting reality. She told people she was advising my company, that she was helping with decisions, that she had connections she was using for me. None of it was true. But here's the thing about lies. They expand. Soon, her stories didn't match, details shifted, timelines broke, and people began to notice. Quietly. A relative asked me why my mother mentioned a project I'd never heard of. A colleague politely questioned her involvement. I didn't defend myself. I didn't correct her. I let confusion do the work. This wasn't revenge in the dramatic sense. There was no confrontation, no humiliation, just space. Space for her contradictions to breathe. The more praise she received, the more she reached for it. The more validation she craved, the less careful she became. That's the trap of narcissism. You think you're in control until your own words betray you. She began offering advice publicly, advice that didn't align with reality. She spoke about challenges my company never faced. She credited herself for decisions she didn't understand. People nodded at first, then they hesitated, then they stopped asking questions altogether. That silence wasn't admiration, it was doubt. I could feel the shift. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened inside me. I felt lighter. For the first time, my success felt clean, unshared, unclaimed. I realized I didn't need to prove anything. Karma wasn't about punishment, it was about exposure. And exposure doesn't require force, it requires consistency. I stayed consistent with the truth, by living it, not arguing for it. And she stayed consistent with the lie, by expanding it until it couldn't hold. I knew something was coming, not because I planned it, but because lies always collapse under their own weight. And when they do, they don't fall quietly. The moment karma arrived didn't feel dramatic, it felt quiet. My mother was invited to a small networking dinner, one she proudly told everyone about. She said it was because of her role in my success. I wasn't there. That mattered. The people attending weren't family or friends. They were professionals, investors, founders, people who ask questions and expect real answers. She told me about it afterward, glowing with excitement. They loved me, she said. They were so impressed. I smiled and said nothing. A week later, I started getting strange messages, subtle ones. Someone asked if my mother had officially worked with my company. Another person wondered why her descriptions didn't match public information. Then a former colleague called me directly. He didn't sound angry, just confused. He said my mother spoke confidently about projects that never existed, about strategies that didn't make sense, about challenges my business had never faced. And when asked for details, she couldn't provide them. That's when the room changed. People didn't confront her. They didn't argue. They simply stopped listening. This is how karma works with narcissists, not through exposure, but through loss of credibility. She told the same stories she'd always told, but this time no one clapped. Soon after, the invitations stopped. The comments on her posts slowed. The praise faded. She noticed immediately. She called me, voice tight, pretending not to care. They don't understand my role, she said. They don't see everything I've done. I didn't correct her. I didn't defend myself. I just listened. Because the truth didn't need my voice anymore. This wasn't loud revenge. It wasn't humiliating. It was natural. Her identity had been built on borrowed success, and borrowed things eventually get returned. She tried to reclaim control. She hinted that I was ungrateful, that I'd changed, that success had made me cold. But the tone was different now, less confident, more desperate. A narcissistic mother without an audience loses power, and for the first time, she realized she wasn't standing on her own achievements. She was standing on mine, and I had quietly stepped away. The family betrayal hadn't destroyed me like she expected. It had exposed her, and I didn't feel victorious. I felt calm, because karma hadn't chosen sides. It had simply followed the truth.
After everything settled, I expected to feel triumphant. I didn't. What I felt instead was quiet. My mother and I still speak, but not the way we used to. There are boundaries now, clear ones. She no longer speaks for me. She no longer introduces herself through my achievements. Not because she apologized, but because she no longer could. That's the hardest truth I had to accept. A narcissistic mother doesn't change because you ask her to. She changes when the environment stops rewarding her behavior. I stopped trying to win her approval, stopped hoping she'd suddenly see me as separate from herself. That freedom didn't come overnight. It came slowly, through distance, clarity, and self-respect. The family betrayal hurt deeply, but it also taught me something no success ever could. You can love someone and still step away from the version of them that harms you. For a long time, I thought choosing myself meant choosing revenge. But real revenge wasn't destruction. It was detachment. It was refusing to play a role in a story that erased me. I learned that karma doesn't always arrive as justice you can celebrate. Sometimes it arrives as silence, as relevance fading, as attention moving on. And that's enough. My success feels different now. Not louder, not bigger, just honest. I no longer feel the need to explain my journey. People who matter can see it. People who don't never needed convincing. If you're listening to this and seeing yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are not selfish for wanting ownership of your life. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. And you are not responsible for managing someone else's ego, even if they raised you. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't confronting the betrayal. It's walking forward without carrying it. I didn't lose my mother. I lost the illusion that she would ever be proud of me, instead of what she could claim. And in exchange, I gained peace. So I'll leave you with this. If someone in your life took credit for your pain, your work, your success, would you fight them? Or would you quietly step back and let the truth speak for itself?